We are not told that Jesus ever said he wanted to be worshiped. He did tell us how he wanted to how he wanted people to relate to him. Follow me. Take up my yoke and learn from me. Hear me. Ponder what I'm saying. Keep my words. He never said worship me. But if he had, based on his words and example in Matthew, Luke, and Mark, and also John, what can we guess from those words and example? What can we reasonably think he might have meant? Jesus was a leader by action and words, and his own word, follow me. But what else do we know about leaders, ones worthy of the name, worthy of reverence for leadership? In Lord of the Rings, we see at the end of the movie, Aragorn was obviously a leader. Well, hundreds of millions of people from around the world went to the movie because they thought he was an example of true leadership. So if Aragorn would agree that he wanted to be worshipped, which certainly he never said, but let's say he did. Well, Aragorn, what do you mean by worshiping you? What would he have meant if he had ever said, I want you to worship me, based on the man we see depicted upon the screen, King Aragorn? What would he have meant? Follow me. Follow my physical leadership. Follow the leadership of my words. Embody my example. Embody my words. Embody my spirit. And why would Aragorn have wanted to be worshipped in that way? One reason and one reason only. He would have seen it was the best way for the soldiers to animate themselves as full, effective human beings. And maybe that would arrive in a miracle, but if it didn't produce a miracle of victory, which was impossible, they still would have been fully alive as human beings. And that is the ultimate victory. If Aragorn had any thought of wanting to be worshipped, it would have been 100% so that people became the most alive, human, effective force for good that had ever been seen. Figuratively, there was a leader of teams of people over many decades to advance safety and survivability in the airline industry. And figuratively, we saw that nearly impossible achievements have been the result, manifest in 80 some odd people walking away from an unsurvivable crash in Toronto recently. Figuratively, there was a leader of that, although literally it was multiple people over decades. But figuratively, there was a leading force. There was a leading figure, figuratively. Can we imagine that leader, those leaders, wanted to be worshiped in any other way than people rising to the highest level of delivered service that they could possibly deliver? Can we imagine that it was about them? When we think of a leader in the perspective of an Aragorn, someone that calls themselves a leader that wants to be worshipped, that's ego. Was there any ego in Aragorn? Was there any ego in Jesus? Was there any ego in Jesus? Worship to such people means embody the highest that you see in me so that it activates the highest that can be seen in you for the sake of it? No. There are ends that need to be achieved, or people are going to die. People are going to continue to die. People are going to continue to suffer. It's not about me, the leader. It's about the people who are trying to be served. Worship me that way. Don't offend me by wasting 1 second on making of yourself a worshiper. What? What? This is about people we can serve. Not me. It is about people we can serve. And when there is such a rare egoless leader that has surrendered themselves to serving a larger group, sometimes it activates the image of God within us. Our spirit that is holy, the place where divine miracles can come from. And we saw in that near-fatal crash in Toronto that hundreds of people over decades, thousands of people, holding themselves to worship in the sense of serving a larger good, being living worship by embodying the finest, courageous, divine character of the leader that they rallied behind. The miracles resulted. Lives were saved, and their own lives were saved by surrendering to the highest within them. There is no worship that Jesus could call that Aragorn could call that, other than surrendering to the higher good of the larger group. Without soldiers devoted not to worshiping Aragorn, but to achieving the highest possible good, there's no worship of Aragorn. There's lip service. There's self-serving, self-gratifying, blasphemy of the likes of Aragorn. The only way to worship Aragorn was to serve the mission that he had devoted his life to. The only way to worship the figurative leader of airline safety was to surrender themselves not to that leader, but to the mission, the goal of serving the larger collective. People that were not, those airline workers weren't serving themselves. Maybe they'd get saved. That isn't what motivated them. They saw the lives of hundreds or thousands of tens of thousands of people that were in their hands, and they surrendered to the service of those people in their imagination. That's what Aragorn meant by serving. That's what Jesus meant by worshiping. Be like me, Jesus would say. What do I mean by worship me? Be like me. Make of yourself the good tree. Someone devoted, sacrificing joyfully their life for the larger good, which is what life itself is, which is what joyful life itself is.